Hi guys, Ronnie here. Today I want to address the topic of rim depth and how to choose an aero wheel that suits you, because I've been asked about which rim depth is the best, which is the best compromise, and I'm afraid there's no easy answer to that. But having tried 15 different aero wheel sets in the last 3 years, I will try to put together some kind of guide to help you make an informed decision. So the first assumption while looking at the wheel and its depth is that a deep rim or a deeper wheel is going to be more aerodynamically efficient. That's mostly true if you look at, for example, wheel sets within one brand, because then they have a good comparison, so they have to try, and usually they succeed, to make a deeper rim faster. So that's quite straightforward. The thing is, though, there are some real high-end, well-developed rim shapes from renowned brands that invest heavily in their testing and engineering, whereas there are some open mold Chinese carbon rims which can be perfectly fine and safe to ride, but of course at that price point you're not getting real research and engineering in that department. So it can easily happen that, for example, a very high-end 40 or 50 mil wheel set like these MV 4.5s, for example, can be much faster in the wind tunnel than, let's say, a V-shaped narrow 80 mil deep open mold rim. So that's one thing to bear in mind. Then the second thing, and I think this is arguably more important than outright speed, and that is stability, but I mean crosswind stability, and in terms of handling when the winds are up. Why do I think this is more important? Well, it doesn't matter if you have a slightly faster wheel set. If it's too scary to ride, then you can't actually use it. And again, the assumption here usually is that a deeper rim is going to be less stable in the wind. But that's not necessarily the case again, because there are some rims that are extremely well designed with stability in mind. So these are going to be far superior. And this is where it really starts to split, in terms of what is the ideal compromise. Going by the examples of these MV 7.8s, I would say that this wheel set, and it's surprising and maybe hard to imagine or even believe, but in my experience these are not more than, I'd say, 5 or 10% less stable than the 4.5s. The difference is extremely slim, and they offer a good chunk of extra speed. And the weight difference is not all that much again. So, yeah, again, if you take a V-shaped 80 mil narrow rim, it's probably going to be unrideable in most conditions. So even though it could be faster than a good 40 or 50 mil rim, you can't really make use of it because it's just too scary to ride. Another thing to bear in mind is the actual bike type, because road bikes are designed to be agile and quick handling, race bikes mainly, while on a time trial bike or a triathlon bike you have more weight on the front end, you have more relaxed and slacker geometry, longer wheelbase usually. This is going to be much more stable in the wind. So on a triathlon bike or time trial bike, you can get away with using a less stable, deeper or faster rim profile for most of the time. Then the third factor that a lot of people consider when choosing the wheel set is the weight. And they sometimes, when they want some climbing performance, they usually look at shallow wheels. I think this is a bit of a mistake. Let me give you an example again. So and we have just recently released their 3.4s, and they're designed to give an air advantage but also be lightweight for climbing. The problem is, however, the Clincher version is just 30 or so grams lighter than the 4.5s, and it's not going to be anywhere near as good in terms of aerodynamics probably. So in this case, going for a shallow wheel doesn't really make sense, does it? Then another example I've just looked up are the heads. Again, the Jet series. If you look at the Jet 6 and the Jet 4, then again the difference is just 30 or 40 grams between those, and the 60s are going to be probably a good chunk faster, and they're wider as well, so suit the wide tires better. So that's going to be again far superior. The wheel sets that I don't think make too much difference at all are the shallow carbon clinchers, because those are not going to be too much lighter than an aluminum rim. They're the most prone to having brake failures, and since they are shallow, they offer no air advantage. They just don't make too much sense to me. Some people also like to think at the other end of the spectrum, so disc wheels and tri-spoke wheels. In my experience, a tri-spoke is always going to be less stable on the front than a deep section, just from the construction. I also have the two spokes now, but I've yet to try those. Unfortunately, the weather has been awful. But the disc wheel at the rear, many people think that it negatively affects the handling. Now, that's a big misconception. And I think that a good disc wheel is rideable in any conditions. There are two reasons for that. So the first one, obviously, is the rear wheel. So you can't create steering torque at the rear wheel because it's fixed. So that's one thing. You'd have to actually break the traction of the rear tire to make a significant amount of steering input into the bike, and that just can't really happen. Of course, with the full disc, you're going to have a large surface area for the wind to press on, and that creates a force, arguably. But the thing that people don't realize is how the steering torque actually develops. So if you have a deep rim, you have this area. Let's say the wind is blowing from the left. So that means a pocket of high pressure air is created on the left side of the rim, and it's up to the designer of the rim to create a way to just ease into that high pressure to make the rim shape more stable. So essentially what you have, or what you need to have, is a rim that doesn't just dump that pressure suddenly. That's the jerking you can feel on your handlebars and riding in the windy conditions. But if you imagine this as a full disc, then you realize that since it's full, it's a disc, it can't really dump that pressure to the other side, so it's not going to do much steering input. So that's disc wheels covered. Finally, another thing to consider is the ride of different depths of wheels. In my experience, it's the 40 and 50 mil rims that have the best ride. The reason for that is that in a shallow carbon clincher, that can't really flex, an aluminum clincher that's quite stiff can't really flex vertically without being damaged. But then on the other hand, if you have a very deep wheel, you need to put a lot of material in to just make it stiff enough to be safe. So you can't really rely on that flexing of the laminate. Whereas on a rim like the 303s, which were specifically designed for this, or the new version here. Now these are very wide and not very deep, so they can be designed with a fair amount of vertical flex in there, and it's just visible in one of their videos from the early testing on 303. It can flex a huge amount, so it gives a very comfortable ride. This is probably the reason why pros, even though Paris-Roubaix and the other classics are quite flat, they don't use very deep rims, because they just ride a bit on the harsh side. If you want to have some other questions, then leave them in the comments down below, and if you'd like to see more about the individual wheel reviews that I've done, then don't forget to tune into our channel and subscribe. It's all for today, thanks for watching, and see you next time.